Welcome to Astrological Investigations. I am Supreme and I come on here to do a collective psychic oracle reading on the late and great Michael Jackson, one of the greatest entertainers of all time, the greatest American singer and songwriter. He was labeled the king of pop. If you don't know Michael Jackson, you've been under a rock. So, Google him, research him, one of the greatest men that ever lived. Okay, the religious community would call him the Jesus Christ of the entertainment industry. This man, Michael Jackson, was a great man. He has reached the levels of greatness within his being while here on earth, because anytime you have the power to bring the people together, you are only as great as your ability to bring the people together. And that is what Michael did. He brought the world together through his music. All races, all religions, all walks of life, all faiths, everybody knows Michael Jackson. Okay, I lit my zodiac candle, my astrology candle, to tune into the ether. Every time I light this candle, it lets the spirits know that it sends a smoke signal out to the ether, letting them know that I am officially clocked in. Okay, and I am clocked in to be of service, to be a bridge from that realm to this realm. Okay, through my readings. Okay, we are in search, me and my spirit team are in search for the soul of Michael Jackson. Okay, I am going to conjure his soul up, and we're going to do a reading on him. I'm going to talk about his life, and then we're going to talk about his death, and then we're going to let him talk to us by talking through me, through us, me and my spirit team. Okay, so Michael Jackson was born August 29th, 1958 in Gary, Indiana. Okay, and Michael Jackson died June 25th of 2009 of cardiac arrest due to acute propofol intoxication, and Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. He died at the hospital. He was pronounced dead in LA, California. Okay, Michael Jackson was 50. Okay, I've been listening to his music as I researched a lot of information on him. Of course, I didn't have to research too much because I know a lot about Michael Jackson. Okay, like I grew up in that era, so we all know Michael Jackson. My brother had his red jacket with the zippers. You know, we know and we love Michael Jackson. We are all Michael Jackson fans. Okay, Michael Jackson made many number one hits, including Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, Rock With You. I'm just going to name a few: Billie Jean, Beat It, Thriller, I Just Can't Stop Loving You, Bad, Smooth Criminal, The Way You Make Me Feel, Man in the Mirror. Like, we all know those songs. We know the words to those songs. When Michael Jackson's music comes on in the club or at a party, we all get up and dance. Even if you don't know the song, his music will make you move. It does something to your spirit and it makes you move. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about his life and his energy. Okay, I uh, drew up a chart, a birth chart for Michael Jackson's birth, and I drew up a birth chart for his death. I drew up a death chart. Uh, and it is a chart of where the planets, which are our ancestors, where the planets were located at these specific times. Okay, because our planets are planetary beings. They are beings. They have memory. Okay, planets remember everything. They keep track of everything. Okay, there is a time stamp of every situation and circumstance that has ever happened or existed in the history and the future of mankind. And it's all time stamped in the planets. Okay, so it's just a matter of knowing how to tune into the etheric realm, which is what we do as astrologers and as oracles. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do in this reading. We're tuning into the planets on the day Michael Jackson was born and the day this great man, this great king of pop was taken from us. Okay, and the planets are going to help us understand what's going on, and we're going to allow Michael's energy to tell us the story. Okay, so Michael Jackson was a full moon baby. Okay, because on August the 29th, 1958, the sun was in Virgo and the moon was in Pisces. Okay, now anytime the sun is in the opposite sign of the moon, or whether the moon is in the opposite sign of the sun on the zodiac wheel of energy, that represents a full moon. Anytime you see a full moon, if you go look outside at night and you see a full moon, whatever season it is, the moon is in the sign of the opposite of that season. Okay, so right now it is Aquarius season. Okay, it is Aquarius season today. Now, if there's a full moon outside, the moon would be in Leo because Leo is the opposite sign of Aquarius. Okay, a new moon is when the moon and the sun is in the same sign. Okay, so you can literally look up at night and you can tell what time it really is, because true time is formulated by our sun and our moon. That is the true clock. Okay, that is the pattern of every clock. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The 12 houses represent the clock of the universe. Okay, it's all astrology. Everything originated from astrology. It is the original science. It is the original timekeeping system. Okay, it is the original time. So, what is it like to be a full moon baby? Okay, Michael Jackson's full moon existence. Well, let's look at the sun first. Okay, so his sun was in Virgo. So he was attributed, his identity was attributed with Virgo energy. Virgo energy is about service, it's about work, it's about the way things work. So Virgo people are influenced with an energy that makes them curious about the way life works, the way the body works, the way things work in general. You know, what makes a person sick? How does that work? What makes a person healthy? How does that work? How do you get from point A to point B? How does that work? Virgo people are very intellectual. They're very down to earth and they're very practical. They are very physical. They need to know step by step instructions on how something works. Okay, that is what fuels the Virgo intellect. They're not at all concerned with speculations and, oh, I believe this, well, I believe that, or I think that such and such. Okay, think they might have some type of respect for the way you think, but they don't have respect for what you believe in, because Virgos don't really respect belief. They respect facts. They want to know the facts. Okay, it either it is or either it ain't. That is Virgo energy. Okay, those are the maintenance people of our zodiac energy. We all have Virgo energy in us. Okay, you do not have to be born from the end of August until the end of September to be a Virgo. Okay, we all have Virgo energy somewhere in our nature. Okay, and when you understand how your Virgo energy works, then you will be able to align yourself, with that energy in due season. And you will get the benefit of when the planets move and make their transitions and movements through the energy of Virgo. Okay? So you must know how every sign works in you. Okay? And if you don't, I will be glad to do your chart for you. Okay? I don't charge much for my birth charts. I charge $25 for a basic reading for the birth charts. Okay, so it is very important to know that. Also attached to this video, I have a tutorial video that will break down every sign and symbol that you will see on every card that I will ever pull for any reading. And it is a time-stamped tutorial, so you're able to go and click on the exact number that you want information on, or the exact symbol or sign or planet that you want information on whatever card that you see come out. Okay, and that timestamp is also in the link of that tutorial video, which is in the link of this video below. Okay, so Michael Jackson's moon was in Pisces. His full moon was in Pisces. Now, remember I was telling you Virgo is all about physical practicality. They're not at all concerned about I believe, or they're not at all concerned about speculation. Okay, but guess what Pisces energy is about? Right, speculation. It is about the exact opposite of what Virgo stands for. And that's what makes Virgo a full moon. That's what makes Michael Jackson a full moon baby, because his moon is in the opposite energy of his sun. And opposites attract. You have to bring opposites together to have balance in life. And that's why full moon people represent the balance that makes them whole, that makes us all whole. And that's why their presence, a person who has a full moon energy, their presence affects all of us. Like just like a full moon affects nature. It moves us. A lot of things that you see happen on the news happens during a full moon. So his life was surrounded by a lot of drama, a lot of activity. I'm not going to even say drama as if the full moon is bad. It's just the full moon is about activity. It is about the highest level of activity. So his presence ignited people's highest level of activity. Okay, so his life was surrounded by a lot of activity. Now, his Mercury was in Leo, and Leo is a creative energy. Okay, it is a creative, fun-loving, entertaining energy. We all have Leo energy. Okay, that is the entertainer in us. That is a part of us that seeks attention. Okay, it seeks applause. It wants to leave an impression on people. It wants to love. It wants to play. It wants to entertain. It wants to make happy the masses. His Mercury, which is the planet of our intellect, our brain, how we interact, and how we formulate language, how we communicate, how we distribute what we want to say, and how we say it. So Michael Jackson's communication language was Leo language. And that's what made him such a very powerful entertainer. Because not only was he a full moon baby, but he had Mercury. Now, Michael Jackson had Mercury, Venus, and Uranus in Leo. So he had a lot of planets in Leo energy. That's what made him such a powerful entertainer, because entertainment is Leo energy. Okay, anytime you are standing on stage where all eyes are on you, that's Leo attention. Okay, just like Capricorn. But Capricorn represents the authority figure. It doesn't represent necessarily attention. Capricorn represents the fame of authority. It represents success. So Capricorn energy would most likely represent Michael Jackson's manager. Okay, the person that don't really need the Capricorn energy is the person that is an authority figure. That is the person that manages the show. They don't need to be the show. However, Capricorn knows how to embrace the spotlight, but they're really not concerned with attention. They're concerned with management and success and status. They are concerned with the status that what they manage makes them. Okay, that's why Capricorn is considered the goat. Okay, the goat doesn't need attention, but the lion does. The lion loves the limelight. Okay, so the goat and the lion works very well together. Okay, Capricorn know they are going places when they have a Leo in their life, or anybody with Leo energy. Okay, so being that his Mercury and his Venus and his Uranus, which is the planet of rebellion. Uranus represents everything outside of the box. Okay, it does not represent tradition. It does not represent things that make people give you a round of applause. Uranus represents the energy in us that makes people say, who does that? Like, who the fuck does that? That's Uranus energy. And Uranus doesn't give a fuck because they know they give off, they thrive off of that type of attention, that outside the box attention. Okay, because Uranus rules Aquarius, and Aquarius is the opposite of Leo. Aquarius doesn't need a round of applause or attention. They want freedom. So they don't care. They expect people to wonder who the fuck does that. Okay? Aquarius is comfortable with that energy. So is Uranus, because that is what that energy rules. And Michael Jackson's Uranus was in Leo, which is the energy that wants a round of applause. So when you have Uranus in Leo, how do you connect freedom with attention? Okay, because you have Leo that wants to make sure that they are doing whatever is going to give them the round of applause or attention that they crave. But then you have Uranus that's like, fuck them people, fuck that round of applause. Let's do what we want to do. Even if people shun us or kick us to the curb as the outcasts of society, we don't give a fuck. That's Uranus. So how does Uranus connect with Leo? Those are opposite energies. So how it connects is it represents a rebellious streak in the creative energy of Leo. It represents the outside the box Leo energy. This represents an individual that will invent something creative. Like they'll invent a new clothing line, a new line of fashion, something that's never been created before, because now you have creativity and then you have innovation, which is Uranus. Okay, Uranus is all about rebellion, innovation, out with the old, in with the new. Okay, Uranus wants to invent while Leo wants to create. So when you have invention and creation together, to make that mix, you want to create, you want to invent a new creation. You want to create things that are new, that has never been created before. A whole nother entity. Like Michael Jackson, we all can attest to, was a whole nother entity. Okay? He literally created this whole other entity. Like literally. Like, no, literally. Because have you seen Michael Jackson as a kid and seen him in his latter years, closer to the end of his life? Two totally different people. Matter of fact, two totally different entities. Michael went from one end of the spectrum to the other in his creativity, the exact polar opposite. Like literally. But we loved it. That's cause it was Michael. No, even if you looked at it like, what the hell? Who does that? Michael Jackson. They let him have it. That is that typical Uranus and Leo energy. The part that's like, okay, who does that? But yet we can't be mad because that's fucking Michael Jackson. That is the greatest of all time. So although he's doing this weird shit, we love it anyway because it's Michael Jackson. His Venus was also in Leo. in Leo, which is why he had a very good fashion intellect. He knew how to put things together. The glitz, the glamour, the sparkle. Like he was on stage, he looked like a whole sun, moon, and stars at night in the night sky. Because Michael Jackson, he had these type of clothes and attire that made him glitter on stage. Like he brought the glamour to men. Like he showed men how to glitter themselves up and glamour themselves up, and still be a ladies' man. That was Michael Jackson. Okay, he loves to dance and he loves to entertain, because anytime Venus is in Leo, you're talking about Venus, the planet of love, and then Leo, the planet of entertainment. So Michael Jackson loved to entertain. Okay, and Venus represents music. So Leo mixed with music represents a dancer, an entertainer who loves to get attention and who will definitely get attention for his dance moves, which he did. His dance moves were trend setting. Okay, his Mars, the planet Mars, was in Taurus when he was born. Okay, Mars in Taurus is a person that is financially competitive. One way or the other, a Mars in Taurus will make it to the top of being rich. They will get that bag because Taurus is about the bag. Taurus energy, we all have Taurus energy. That is the part of us that's about our bag. Okay, even when you post on social media, you be like, okay, I'm going to get to my bag. You're operating in your Taurus energy, because Taurus energy is about how we stabilize ourselves. It represents going out in the world and getting everything we need to secure our existence, whatever that is: food, shelter, clothing, money, diamonds, gold, silver, furniture, cars, houses, all of that. We're getting all of that. That's Taurus energy. The more you, and that energy in him was very competitive, because anything that Mars touches, it makes it aggressive. Mars is our fighting energy. It is our warrior. It is how we go out and get what we want. We fight for what we want. Okay, so Michael Jackson was very financially competitive. Now, what Mars also does in Taurus is it triggers financial warfares and lawsuits and allegations. Because remember, we're speaking about war concerning money. So he had the energy. People with Mars and Taurus have the energy that seems to always manifest lawsuits. Somebody's always out to get them for their money. Okay, so Michael Jackson was involved in a lot of lawsuits and allegations. Okay, that's a whole nother video. Okay, you might want to go research all of that for yourself. But I will be talking about a lot of that. It may come up in the reading. If it comes up in the reading, I'm going to have to talk about it. His Jupiter was in Libra. Okay, so that represents expansive relationships and partnerships, because Jupiter energy represents our expansive energy. It represents opportunities and advantages, the things that we can take advantage of, healthy advantage of. It represents taking advantage of your gifts, your talents, your abilities. It represents taking a healthy advantage of those things. And it represents blessings. And it represents fortune. Jupiter represents things that we don't have to really work too hard for. It just seems to fall in our laps. And it also, whatever sign that Jupiter is in, will represent how these blessings and opportunities will most likely unfold. Okay, and how these advantages will make themselves available. So Michael Jackson's Jupiter was in Libra. So his blessings were through relationships, his connections with other people. Okay, that is how Michael got rich a lot, aside from his talent. The talent was there, but you need relationships in order to move up the ladder. Because, even down to you need somebody to like what you do. That's a relationship. Okay, you need somebody to invest in what it is that you do. That's a relationship. So Michael Jackson wasn't going nowhere without relationships. I mean, we all can't go nowhere without relationships, but he was the example. People with Jupiter in Libra are the example of there will be no wealth without relationships. Okay? They are the example to teach all of us how that aspect in us works. Okay? His Saturn, oh my God, nobody likes the planet Saturn. Saturn puts the brakes on things. Okay? It draws the lines. And Saturn will let you know, do not cross this line. You have to stay within this line for the time being. Okay? Now, Saturn represents our challenges, the laws, and the rules and regulations that need to be abided by and followed in order for things to operate correctly and smoothly. Okay? When we operate outside of these boundaries, that's when punishment manifests. Punishment can manifest as sickness. You have some people that are sick because they're not living right. Okay, they're not cooperating with their Saturn. We all have Saturn. Okay, so you want to study your Saturn because that is where a lot of your punishments in life are coming from. A lot of your punishments and curses and setbacks, all of that. You may want to study your Saturn energy. Michael Jackson's Saturn was in Sagittarius. Okay, when your Saturn is in Sagittarius, that is the energy of your faith being challenged, literally. Like, if he was a Christian, Michael Jackson would be the kind of Christian that would question God. Because you can't just put something in front of a Saturn and Sagittarius and expect them to jump head over heels and catch the Holy Ghost and say, yes, God is real. No, he questioned God. He had a lot of fears surrounding higher power, faith, and things like that. He had a lot of fears surrounding that. Okay. Also, Sagittarius energy represents travel and it represents our experiences in life. Sagittarius energy represents what we learn from our own experiences in life, as opposed to Gemini energy, which is the opposite of Sagittarius. Gemini represents what we learn through books, but Sagittarius represents what we learn through our own life experiences. Okay, and that is what Michael was challenged with. Because you got to remember, Michael Jackson was sheltered. Okay, he was controlled his whole life, to be the man that he was destined to be. They made sure he worked day and night on his music, his talent, his ability. He really didn't have the freedom to live life and learn lessons. He didn't have the freedom to develop his Sagittarius energy. Okay, so Saturn played out very cold in that part of him, and that's why he had a cold optimism and a sense of humor. He had a cold sense of humor. You know, he wasn't really bubbly. Just because he looked bright and shimmering and glittery and all of this, Michael Jackson wasn't a bubbly individual. Okay. Now, his Uranus, like I said, was in Leo. We went over that. We went over the rebelliousness of creativity, the outside the box creativity, inventing new ways to be creative, a whole new entity. He was odd, okay? His childlike energy was very rebellious. Now, his Neptune, which is the planet of imagination. Neptune is a planet of smoke and mirrors. It represents what you actually believe in as opposed to what's actually real. If Neptune represents what you make real through your mind's eye, that doesn't mean that it's real. That's just how you choose to look at it. Okay? And that's also why people can deceive you. And Neptune is the energy and the planet that represents where all of these experiences takes place and how they play out. Okay, so whatever sign that your Neptune is in will represent how your smoke and mirror energy plays out, and the energies in you that are not so clear. Okay, so Michael Jackson's Neptune was in Scorpio. Anytime your Neptune is in Scorpio, your Scorpio energy is never clear. Nobody never really knows where they stand when it comes to Scorpio energy when Neptune is there. Because Scorpio energy is about power, control, and sex. And when you think of power, control, and sex, and you look at Michael Jackson, you never really know where he stands in those areas because it could be either or. I mean, everybody questioned his sexuality all his life. We didn't know whether he was straight, gay. I mean, he had children, he had women. We just never seen what he did in the bedroom. And to my opinion, I don't think all those children are his because Michael Jackson is a black man. Them children are not black. They don't even look mixed. Those children look full bred white, European, Irish, and it's not a thing of racism, it's the truth. You can tell if one of them kids was Michael Jackson's. Michael Jackson was a black brother. Okay, no matter how he looked and no matter what that Uranus did to his Leo and had him outside the box creating a whole new human being, okay, Michael Jackson was black. He was a Negro. Full blown Negro from head to toe. Okay, so them children, I question a lot of that because but you never know, it might come out in the reading. Okay, so his Pluto, and then we're going to get to the reading. His Pluto energy, Pluto represents death. When you want to find out what type of energy will surround a person's death and how they transition, because death is not just the losing of the physical body. Death represents the loss of a relationship, the loss of a job, the loss of a home, it could the loss of a loved one. So death is death. It's an energy. Okay, whatever you lose during that energy of death represents the loss. So it doesn't always mean you're going to lose your body. Okay, death can mean you lost your health, but you still have your body, or you lost your marriage, but you still have your body, So his Pluto was in Virgo. So the death energy of that generation, because Pluto is a generational planet, so is Neptune, and so is Uranus. Okay, so a generational planet means people that are born within that window of time that you were born in. Was like a 5 year window. Some planets are like a 20-year window. Everybody born within that 20-year cycle or 10-year cycle share the same planet, okay, and sign. So Pluto in Virgo was shared by that entire generation of people that are up there that are the same age as Michael. Now, he died when he was 50, okay, and he died in 2009. Michael Jackson would be about 60 something today. So people with Pluto in Virgo are in their 60s today. They are in their late 50s and 60s today. Okay, and this is 2025. Okay, we are in January 2025. So now the energy that surrounds the deaths of those people are concerning health issues, medications, doctors, work. It could be a work-related death, or it could be death from an employee, something that happened at work. Okay, it could be death through poisoning, food poisoning, medication poisoning, uh, overdoses, because Pluto represents obsessions and Virgo energy represents health, medications, and doctors. Okay, so Michael Jackson definitely had an obsession. He definitely had an obsession with medications. Okay, you could imagine, and stimulants, that generation period. Okay, work, employees, and or either something stops working because Pluto, something in the body. Okay, because remember, Virgo energy represents how everything works, like I said earlier in the video. So when you have Pluto in Virgo, and Pluto represents death, it represents when something stops working. Excuse me. All right, now let's get to the reading. I believe I am fully tapped in to Michael Jackson's energy. Okay, I feel him. And I mean, I felt him minutes ago, okay, throughout the whole reading. Even when I was playing his music while I was researching and preparing to start this reading, you know, his music was playing in the background. I was researching information, getting my information together, drawing up his charts, you know, placing his planets where they were at the time of his death and at the time of his birth. And I'm looking at all of that right here in front of me, you know. So right now I have 5 oracle decks that I created that I'm going to work from. Each deck consists of 144 cards, which represents the 144 root energy and patterns of energies that everything that can possibly take place in existence derives from. So this first deck, I call it the Powers and Principles deck. Okay, this is going to represent the gateway of the chart that's going to be cast. It represents the angle that Michael Jackson is going to talk to us through. Okay, now Michael, I know you're with me. We are tuning in to the energy that manifested that led up to your death. Okay, now they told us that you were, I'm talking to his spirit because I can feel him. I literally feel him, you know, and he's going to assist me. Okay, but we got to make sure we are clear on the type of information that we want Michael to talk about. Okay, because he's in a place of all truth. Doesn't have to lie. Everything is true. You know, even if it was his fault, he's going to let us know. You know, if he did it, he said, yeah, I did it. You know, this is what I did wrong, or this is what I did right, or this is who did this is who did that, this is why it happened. You know, he's in that place, the etheric realm. No need to lie, you know. So, and that's what we're tapping into, Michael, because we want you to talk to us and tell us about the energies. Every card that I'm going to pull from these 5 different decks are going to represent the energies that played out in leading up to the type of death that you had. Like what really went on. You know, what was really going on in your life that led up to um, that situation and circumstance, because he was found dead. According to the news, he wasn't found dead. He overdosed. And they rushed him to the hospital. They said, now there was a guy involved too. I wasn't going to put this over there. I'm going to pull the card. Then I'm going to pull the next. They rushed him to the hospital. He had a doctor with a guy named Conrad Murray. That was his doctor that was with him during, because I believe Michael was on tour at the time. And there was a doctor that he hired that was working with him by the name of Conrad Murray that they tried to say was responsible for Michael's death. We don't know, but Michael is going to let us know. Okay? We're going to pull these cards and we're going to let Michael tell his story because nobody can tell it better than Michael. And I've given the etheric realm every possible combination of cards to be from each deck to be able to manipulate their message to bridge it. This deck is who. This is going to let us know who's involved. To bridge the message. I know it sounds like I said Bridget. Y'all probably like, who the hell is Bridget? No. To bridge the message. I gave the etheric realm enough cards to work with. To manipulate the cards. To be able to formulate the message that they want to me to bridge into this realm, okay, for the justice and peace of their families and loved ones that need answers and want to know what really happened. Okay, and speaking of what really happened, this is my deck concerning answers to those questions. What really happened? What really happened, Michael? June 25th, 2009 was a day that we woke up and didn't realize would change our lives. It would alter our energy. Because I don't care where you was on this earth, you found out one way or the other that Michael Jackson died. You're like, what? Not Michael Jackson. You're talking about the king of pop, Michael Jackson? Died? Yep. So it definitely changed. These are the gods. Okay, these are the planets. This is a deck of planets and where they can be located to help us tap in to finish telling the story. And Michael he's operating through me, so he's the one pulling all these cards. Okay, I'm shuffling the hell out these decks too to make sure that I'm giving them enough information. So, yeah, Michael Jackson. That was a turning point for the entertainment industry. Yes, that was like the whole entire industry was in mourning. They was mourning the death of Michael Jackson. Okay, it was like a universal moment of silence. This is my crime deck. Because of course there was a crime involved. Whether he did or whether somebody else did it, that was a crime involved. Okay? That's a crime, you know? That wasn't planned. He didn't just say, all right, y'all, today I'm finna bring it to an end. I'm finna call it a day. I'm done. It was nice living on earth. I'm getting ready to end my life today. Today's the last day y'all are going to see me. No, it wasn't planned like that. So, of course, there was a crime involved. Whether the crime happened on that day or whether the crime was something that had been going on for a while, but it's definitely a part of the energy of his death. So, Michael, we need to know what this crime was. All right. Y'all ready? I'm going to blow out this candle and turn over these cards. Let's get to the reading. All right. Let's get to the reading. All right. So we have Gemini in the 12th. Okay. We have a foreigner in the house of money, the second house, and it's in reverse. We also have balance in reverse in the 12th house. And we have the sun in reverse in the 9th house. And then we have lies and deceit in the 3rd house. Okay? So, right up front, I'm going to put some cards together because I see a pattern. All right? I see Gemini in the 12th house. Okay, the 12th house is the house of the hidden. That's Pisces' house. Okay, Gemini represents the mind. Okay, now in the house of the mind, which is Gemini's house, the 3rd house, we have lies and deceit. Okay, lies and deceit in the 3rd house, and then Gemini in the 12th house are two in the same cards because these represent Gemini in the 12th can definitely represent lies and deceits. Okay, because like I said, the 12th house is Pisces house. Okay, and now you're dealing with smoke and mirrors, and when you have Gemini there, you're dealing with people that are manipulating a situation with their words. They're telling you one thing, but it's really something else that's going on. That's a lie. That's what a lie is. That is how a lie is formulated. Okay, so we do know that there are lies and deceits involved surrounding Michael's death. What's on the third house when Gemini is in the 12th house? Okay, when Gemini is in the 12th house, we have Virgo in the third house. Virgo is, like I said, represents health, the doctor. And remember when I told you about his death surrounding Virgo energy? These lies and deceits are concerning something that's being communicated to him about his medication, okay, from the doctor. Now, we don't know if this is the doctor that he hired or whether it's just medical information that was being told to him that wasn't true. This is definitely about medical lies and deceit.
When I get angry enough, I write down what I want to say and what I want to talk about to set the record straight. Because you get to a point where you get tired of people lying. I get tired of situations like this, where people completely lie on me, and I'm sick of it.
This is definitely medical lies and deceit. Okay? Gemini in the 12th, and then you have Cancer rising in the first house. Okay? Now,
saw him May 14th.
Do you know how long he'd been given propofol?
Well, see, this is it. There was a lot of footage that was taken out that no one saw, and because that was the edit before the edit, and it's just so much went on. So much went on.
And is that footage damaging? I mean, do you see a guy, in a bit of a daze, a bit of a zombie? I mean, what is the stuff we didn't see?
Well, things that we've noticed, and this is why the defense is going to try to paint my brother out to be a drug addict, and he was very dependent on drugs, and it's not true, because how could someone be dependent on drugs? And it's just 2008, he was dancing 4 hours a day, and he had a 5-year plan of starting a new life. And
well, let me throw something to you.
You have another 12th house card too, which is the balance card that came out in reverse. It's upside down. So that means it's not in balance. So that means his mental psyche, the mental psyche is not in balance. So that's a mental health imbalance.
Yet how much do we really know about his mental health? His cosmetic surgery and skin bleaching suggest he may have had body dysmorphic disorder, although he himself always claimed to have vitiligo. Like Elvis before him, he was addicted to opiate painkillers, ending his 1993 dangerous tour early to go into rehab. His friend, Elton John, describes how he changed and became genuinely mentally ill and a disturbing person to be around. The negative publicity around his trial in 2005 can't have helped his fragile mental state, and there were allegations that he was frequently intoxicated, paranoid, and unable to perform while preparing for his ill-fated comeback tour. And it was one of Dr. Conrad Murray's infusions of propofol, an anesthetic, not a painkiller, that caused his death in 2009. So, was it a case of genuine mental illness, or just another celebrity surrounding himself with yes men to bolster his insecurities?
Right? Am I lying? Mental health imbalance. And there are lies and deceits concerning this health, this mental health, which is creating this imbalance.
But as you say, underneath it, the damage
Yeah.
would be pretty intensive, I would say.
but that's the question. Michael has always had an anesthesiologist around him when he was taking things.
Someone who knew,
whether I knew whether
someone
not,
who knew about the process
yes.
of knocking somebody out for the purposes of sleep.
And plus, he's lived all this time doing Demerol and sleeping pills and also pain pills, but the symptoms from propofol, it's like no one knew that he was, well, the public didn't know that he was complaining about his body, one side being an ice cube, another side being very warm.
Do you know how long he'd been taking? Is there any evidence that you've seen?
I really don't know, but
what is the family's belief? What is the theory that you think about that?
Our belief is that we knew he was doing prescription drugs to sleep and pain, and we didn't know about propofol. I just found out about this drug, which I can't even pronounce hardly, but
Lies that's being told. Okay? Now, the 12th house is Pisces' house, right? But Pisces is not there. In this layout, Gemini is there. But we have to look for Pisces, because once we find out where Pisces is at when Gemini is in the 12th, that's going to piece the puzzle together. And guess where Pisces is at? In Sagittarius' house, in the 9th house. And look, there was a 9th house card pulled, and it was pulled in reverse, and the sun is there. The sun, which is the source of all the planets. Everything revolves around the sun. This entire reading is revolving around this sun in the 9th house, which is Pisces energy. The 9th house is Sagittarius' house. That is the house of experience. That is the house of higher knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Okay? Now, Pisces energy, being that it's in reverse, it represents the deception of those higher knowledge, wisdom, and beliefs, and wisdom and understandings. Okay, Sagittarius energy represents what we learn from our own experiences. And like I said, Michael didn't have a developed Sagittarius energy because his Saturn was there. Okay, and Saturn put the brakes on him living his life so he could learn his lessons. So because there was a lot of things that he did not understand, because this came out in reverse, and it makes sense because Pisces is the energy of understanding. Understanding is the only thing that's going to straighten out the psychological energy of Pisces. They have to understand the reality of something, and they have to accept it. They have to stop painting a rose-colored vision of reality and accept reality raw and uncut. They can learn that from Virgo. Okay? So in this case, the Virgo energy that Michael was learning from was the lies and deceit about his health. About his health. Virgo energy in the 3rd house. The 3rd house is the opposite of the 9th house. So they were in opposites. And lies and deceit is Pisces energy. That is the unbalanced Pisces energy. Lies and deceits is the opposite of truth. And this unbalanced energy is here in the 9th house, upside down, unbalanced. In the house of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. There's a lot of things that Michael did not understand, and people were taking advantage of that. Okay? Now, you have a foreigner that showed up in the 2nd house. The 2nd house is the house of money. That's the house of riches. And we know Michael Jackson was wealthy, very wealthy. Okay? But there is a foreigner that he's involved with that's in his energy right here. And this foreigner is not a good person.
Adrian McManus was once a trusted member of Michael Jackson's inner circle.
This foreigner that he was dealing with was in his circle.
Now she is his accuser. From 1990 to 1994, she was his housemaid, with intimate access to the inner sanctum of the most famous person on earth. It's often said he could be a very generous man when he wanted to be. Did you find that?
There were some different sides to him. There was a kind side to him, and yet there was a dark side. And I feel that he was a manipulator. And I feel that anybody that came in contact with him, he destroyed them. They've been destroyed.
And these accusations are not being made by Adrian McManus alone. New explosive allegations have been made by 2 men who were once very close and very loyal to the singer. Claims they were abused as children and their families exploited in the worst possible way. So why now? What's driving these claims?
And this second house is governed by Leo energy. Okay? So, and Leo's house is the fifth house. And in the fifth house, you have Scorpio. The fifth house is also the house of children. Now, there were I'm not making any judgments, but there were allegations about Michael Jackson having some sexual run-ins with children.
Adrian McManus started working for Jackson in 1993.
I'd walk in his room, his underwears would be floating in the jacuzzi, in the water. He had a jacuzzi in his bedroom. They'd be floating in the water with the little boy's underwear.
We don't know if that was true. We do know that Michael was surrounded by a lot of children. Okay? In my opinion, not only was he surrounded by children, but Michael was a perverted individual aside from his greatness. And the reason why I say perverted was because he altered his physical being. Alteration, perversion is another word of alteration. Okay? When something is no longer straight the way it came, that means it was altered. It was perverted. Okay? Perverted means something has been altered. Okay, so it's not straight anymore. Okay, and nothing on Michael was straight anymore the way it came. His hair was not the hair he was born with. His skin was not the skin he was born with. His nose was not the nose he was born with. You know, it's a lot of work he had done. His chin, his cheeks, his skin. There's a lot of he was a physical perversion. You know, and I know when we say pervert, we think of rapist or whatever, but I mean, it's just pervert means something that is no longer straight. It has been perverted. It has been crooked. It has gotten out of line. So his physical appearance has definitely gotten out of line. And see, me personally, I don't believe in trusting somebody who is that perverted. I don't trust that. Just like I don't believe in trusting, but I'm not trying to cast any judgments. I'm just telling things like it is. It's real. Just like I don't believe in a man who is now a woman, or a woman somebody who was born a woman who is now a man, and you're walking out in this world expecting people to look at you like a trustworthy individual, but you don't even trust nature. So why should we trust you? We have to watch you because you have a double mind. You are double-minded. Okay, you went from one thing to another. That's not who you naturally are. So anything that comes from you in that altered state, in that perverted state, has to be questioned. So that is how I make sense of the situation. I'm just saying, okay. Scorpio, which is the energy of sex, is in the house of children. Okay, the fifth house is the house of children, and that's Leo's house. And the reason why I attributed the toxic aspect of Leo's house was because Leo showed up right here as the foreigner, and it showed up in reverse. So a reverse Leo energy with Scorpio in Leo's house represents it could represent sexual allegations concerning children. And the reason why I'm speaking about lawsuits and allegations is because the second house is the house of money. So this upside down foreigner, there's a lot of sex trafficking too that's foreign. That's the largest thing on the market right now is foreign sex trafficking. Okay, that is the second house card too, especially when it's in reverse with Leo there. And then in the house of Leo, you have Scorpio, which is sex. Okay, and the second house, which would represent trafficking. Okay, so I'm not saying that he was involved with sex trafficking. I'm just reading the card that came out. So lawsuits were clearly dismissed against Michael. They were clearly dismissed, from the foreign boys who are now men. They're like 38 and 40 years old, and they up here trying to talk about what Michael did to them when they were 7 and 8. Because, see, the reason why we know it's all about money, and his family even told us it's all about money.
On CBS this morning, Michael Jackson's family, they are speaking out
about sexual abuse allegations against the singer in an explosive new HBO documentary. In Leaving Neverland, Wade Robson and James Safechuck claim Jackson abused them for years when they were young children. The documentary premieres this weekend. Jackson has always denied any inappropriate behavior with children. Safechuck and Robson both sued the Jackson estate, but their lawsuits were dismissed because of the statute of limitations. They are now appealing that. The Jackson family insists those claims are lies. We spoke to Michael Jackson's nephew Taj and brothers Jackie, Marlon, and Tito. I take this interview very, very seriously because it is very disturbing to me. And that's why I did want to talk to this child psychologist.
Because if you really go back, nobody really started coming forward too much until one, after he died. Well, mainly there was one person that opened up the door for another level of coming for Michael. Because you got to remember, big stars are worth more dead than they are alive. Okay? So nobody knows more about you than the people that's closest to you. And this woman lived with him. Okay? She worked in his home. She worked in his home every day. You know, I believe she had a house of her own, but she was with him every day. Okay? She was with him every day. Who can say that they was with Michael every day? Cleaning up his mess. Cleaning up his house. Cleaning up his laundry. So who had the power to air out his dirty laundry? Of course, this woman, Adrienne McManus. She had the power to air out Michael's dirty laundry. And that's exactly what she was doing. And she was trying to get paid for it. But she waited till the smart time to do it. At a time when he would be worth more, it would be worth more to do it than prior. So she had to wait for him to die because Michael threatened her. And she even let us know that.
Or else.
He said, you know what, Adrienne, if you ever go on a talk show or a TV show, we can hire a hitman, have your neck slit. They'll never find your body. We can hire a sniper, take you out.
The maid testified against Jackson at his 2005 molestation trial, claiming she saw Jackson fondle Macaulay Culkin. Culkin denied that allegation, and Jackson called her a disgruntled ex-employee. He was found not guilty at the trial.
So why Adrienne though? Why this foreigner that works for him? Well, because the son is in the house that Adrienne comes from. The ninth house. She's a foreigner to Michael. Okay, don't let Michael's appearance fool you. Michael is black. Michael's a black man. He is a Negro. Okay, Adrienne McManus, Michael Jackson's maid, is a foreigner. Okay, now his doctor was also a foreigner. It's from the islands. You can tell by his voice. But you can tell what's his name? Conrad Murray.
The color of his skin could be changed. His hair could be changed. He can change his name, but his memory never failed. His memory was constantly intact. And that's why we talk about him wanting to have brain surgery and how that came about. And we talk about those things, like a brain transplant that has never been done. And so Michael was running away from himself. I think when people read this book, they will get to meet Michael that they have never known.
You can tell by his accent. He's from the islands. Jamaica, Barbados, the West Indies, somewhere. You know, he's not American. He's not American. He is a foreigner. Okay? But he's located in the house that's opposite of the ninth house, where all these lies and deceits. Conrad Murray is in the house where all these lies and deceits are coming from. And I'm not saying that he's the one lying or deceiving, but he is the one that has a lot of information, which is what the third house is all about. I really believe that Michael Jackson wasn't as educated as he should have been on his medications and what he was being prescribed. I really believe that. And I believe he got addicted. And I do believe he had a lot of secrets. And of course, you are as sick as your secrets. They say you're only as sick as your secrets, but you are definitely as sick as your secrets. And I'm quite sure Michael Jackson had a lot of secrets. Why? Because he had a lot of power. So of course you have a lot of secrets. You have a lot of hidden things that are built up. So he had a lot to numb. He had a lot to run from. He had a lot to hide for professional purposes and personal purposes and vital purposes. His life was on the line. Because you got to remember, he was a great man, but at the end of the day, he was still human. He still had a body. Although he did his best to change everything that reminded him of how he looked at birth. And he did a good job. He did a weird job, but he did a good job. And I also believe that a lot of that stuff catered to his health issues as well. I'm quite sure all of those surgeries took a toll on his health, took a toll in his bloodstream. Okay. It already took a toll on his skin. Okay. He could not be in the sun for too long. Okay. Because otherwise his skin will experience an allergic reaction that is nothing of what black people suffer from. So, but he didn't want to be black, obviously. He had his reasons. So he did what he had the power to do, alter what he looked like. But everything comes with a price. And Michael Jackson definitely paid the price. But there were a lot of things he couldn't afford. And I'm not just talking about because he didn't have the money for it. There was a lot of things that went on in Michael Jackson's life that he couldn't afford. And I really believe that that's the reason why all that energy was built up in him. And it caused him to just become intoxicated. I don't even think that he wanted to kill himself, but he definitely wanted to be intoxicated. And that's what happened. And he had the power to manipulate his doctors to give him what he wanted. Because at the end of the day, he's fucking Michael Jackson. He's Michael Jackson. They work for him. You don't do what I say, you're fired. So it gets like that. You'd be surprised how human people are behind closed doors. These great people that you see on stage, being nice to everybody, being kind and saying kind words that we live by all of our life, you'd be surprised who they are when that curtain closes. They're human. I wouldn't be surprised. You know why? Because they're human and I'm human and I get it. You're only human. But see, when you live in the spotlight, you have a script to follow that has nothing to do with who you really are, but everything to do with how people can capitalize off of you. His managers, they made money off of him. We're paying you to be this character, and it's paying us. So you have to be what keeps us paid, meaning you can't be yourself. The only thing that came natural to Michael was his gift and his talent. And they set out to fuck everything else up. We'll never let you make it this far being who you really are. You already got that natural gift. So we're definitely not going to let you get to the top looking like your natural self. Because at the end of the day, he was one of the greatest men that ever lived, that ever walked this earth. One of the most popular men in the entertainment industry, and he was a black man at that. Black man, black skin, black nappy hair, black nose, black eyes, black ears, black lips. Michael Jackson was a handsome black man. Talented black man. You know, and it's not about race, it's about the truth. It's the truth. He's a black man. And you have to exert the truth. You have to be extra with the truth when it comes to him, because being a black man is not the first thing that come to people's heads when they see him, especially this generation. You know, they don't know the Michael that we remember, that we know. You know, they only know this white Michael. They only know the late Michael, the recent Michael. I think that sounds more better than just saying the white Michael, you know. But the white Michael, they only know that. There's a lot of black children growing up that don't even know that Michael Jackson is a black man. One of the greatest entertainers that ever walked this earth was a black man. He touched people with his music. And if you don't believe me, go look at his concerts. You had people passing out, people dying. I think somebody died at one of his concerts. Yes, passed out, never got back up. People were passing out at his concerts. Like, you would have thought God was coming down from the skies when you looked at some of Michael Jackson's concerts, because people were dropping to the floor, crying, screaming, Michael, Michael, passing out. Go research, go look on YouTube and look up Michael Jackson concerts. You're going to see them folks. They was tearing them places up for Michael. He had crowds that were miles and miles in some of his concerts. I was looking at one of them concerts. That concert looked like the Million Man March. And if you ever seen the Million Man March, if you've never seen that, go look that up too. The Million Man March, and look at all them people in DC. They were miles and miles down the road. You can see them look like ants everywhere. That's how Michael Jackson's concerts were. Just like the Million Man March, you know. And so, yeah, he touched everybody, all races, all religions, all walks of life, all this and all that, you know. So I don't know if he physically touched them kids or not, but if he did, it wouldn't surprise me. I hope he didn't, you know. So I don't know, but I do know one thing. May he rest in peace, because I know Michael Jackson was under a lot of pressure. You know, he was under a lot of pressure, but he still maintained his gift. You know, he maintained his gift, you know, and I'm so grateful to be able to make connection with him, you know, with his soul, you know, because you know he was talking through this reading. You know, he was letting us have it, the truth, raw and uncut. These are the energies that were involved, and this is how it happened. This is how it went down, you know, because like I said, death wasn't about his overdose. That's just all that energy, all this energy that we just talked about came to a head, and it manifested as intoxicating on propofol. Heart stopped. They couldn't resuscitate him. You know, that's how that happened. But that wasn't the cause of actual death. That was just the way his heart stopped. But all of what Michael was going through is what led up to his death. So, and I really believe he was dying long before he was found intoxicated. And when I say long before, I'm talking about years. I'm not talking about hours or minutes. I'm talking about years. But anyway, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. If you would like a personal reading with me, reach out to me in my email, which is in the link below. Also look at my tutorial, which is also in the link below. Okay, and see what you come up with when you look at my tutorial and you read the cards for yourself. Until then, I love what I do.